let's continue to blitz through grade 11s with our different types of application examples. In our third and final one that I'll be showing you in these tutorials, we're going to be using arrays to store lots of data that will then be processed in some way. And in this case, we're going to make an application that takes test averages and calculates their average, their total averages. Something you can probably do easily on your own, but we can make a program that will automate this for us nicely. And hopefully we're getting a sense through this that we can take behavior and use code to make it much easier to deal with this in the future. For example, I have a program that I've made to calculate my grades for different courses. So I have a whole setup. In fact, let me see if I have it loaded in here. I might not have it in this particular computer's data. Looks like I don't, but I do have a program that I've created to calculate my scores for this semester in a certain way that I like to calculate them. And so I've made some code, and all I have to do is type in a few numbers, and bam, my program calculates it all for me automatically. Really efficient, really awesome to be able to create. And you can do the same thing with some of your own work. And this is a simple example of it. In the project for this section, you'll be able to try and make something a bit more advanced. So let's see here. What do I want this to be able to do? First of all, I want this to be able to accept input from the user about how many entries they want to make. So maybe they have like 5 tests they want to check with each other. Maybe they have like 20. They can decide how many they want to send in. And then I need to have some kind of loop to get the values for each entry. I need to be able to store each entry in an array. And this will allow me to have all the data stored side by side. Oh, sorry, I had to turn my back off to sneeze. Okay, back to this. And then I need to process the array data to calculate the average. We could make a menu for this, but just for time's sake, I won't show you this right now. And the menu right now, you can add that in yourself later. You know what to do. You need to make a while loop that does all those types of things. For now, we're just going to make this a one-shot deal kind of a program. So what do we need to do for now? First of all, let's create a scanner. Or, you know what? Maybe in this program, we will use an example of let me just pull this open here. Oops, in here. We used our get input option. Although, you know what? We're getting integers, so we might as well actually use our scanner. Scanner is easier for integers for now, so use a scanner. And since we're just doing kind of a one-shot deal, I'll import it up there. Remember to always import your classes. We'll just put the scanner in our main here. Now I'm going to say to my user, I want to say, how many scores will you be inputting today? And then I'm going to define a new int, num scores equals scan the next int that we come across. Okay, so what do I want to do with the number of scores? I want to make a new array of integers, an array of ints called score list is a new int with enough entries for all the scores that we're going to make. You might have to go back and review arrays a little bit, like we talked about in our last Greenfoot project. But what we do with an array is we have slots that we store data in. What type of data? Integers. How many slots? Num scores number. I get to choose that each time I run this program. And so maybe I'm only putting in 5 tests, then the number scores would be 5. It would be a 5-length array. But this is now adaptable to different user inputs, which is awesome. So what I need to do now is I need to be able to gather data from the user for each of these different scores. And I'm going to do this with something that we might have forgotten about at this point after our break. I'm going to make a little comment here. Gather data on each score using a for loop. For loops. I'm going to say int I equals 0. Our initial case, I'm starting at 0, slot 0. Remember, arrays start at slot 0. And I'm going to say that I is less than score list dot, if you forget, just put the dot length, the number of entries inside of our list. We want it to be less than, and then I want to increment our I variable. So I'm going to say for each entry in this array, so I'm going to go through it one at a time. If this is a little bit unclear to you, here's what I've done here. Oh, where's all the, why doesn't this stay? Pin, thank you. What I've done here is, let's say I've added 5 entries. I've created an array with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes. Remember that this box is box 0, and then this box is box 1, and this one is 2, and 3, and 4. So when I'm saying its length, it has to be less than the length, because the length will be 5, but there's only 4 slots. And in each box, I need to store some information about the score. This nice little rudimentary example here, but hopefully that helps you remember what's going on. So what I wanted to do, this for statement is saying I'm accessing every box in the array. And now in the code here, I'm going to code in what do I do with each box. Well, I want to put in the average that I'm going to be trying to calculate with later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the user to please input an average, let's just say. It could be a test, it could be something else. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to set the value in our array at the current slot. So the first one will be slot 0, the second will be slot 1, and so on up to slot 4. What's keeping track of what slot I'm at? It's my for loop. It's saying I start at slot 0, and then each time I go through, I'm increasing by 1 until I reach the end of the array. So I'm going to say in my array, score list slot I. That means that the slot that I'm currently at in my for loop, I'm going to set it to scan next int. And it's going to do this for each of the slots. So it's going to repeat this process. Let's just see if my program runs properly. How many scores will you be inputting today? Let's say 5. Please input an average. Let's be confident, 95. Please input an average. Let's say 85. Maybe we are kind of slacking, we got really lazy, and then we played too much Fortnite over break or something. So that's all our program does, but it looks like it runs fine so far. It gets the data wonderfully. So we've accepted input from the user about how many entries they want to make. That's done. Some kind of loop to get the values for each entry. We've done that with a for loop. And store each entry in an array. We've done this. Finally, I want to process the array data to calculate the average. Making a notes like I did up here, where we have listed information about the different functionality that we want in place. Oops, I went too far. Is so helpful for creating your program. If you actually want to not even erase your comments when you submit your project, it might help me know what it is that you actually did. But for clarity right now, I'm just going to erase this. So finally, I need to process this data. So how is an average calculated? I need to take the sum of all of the entries, and then I need to divide it by the total number of entries. So here, I'm going to calculate the average score for all my entries. So how am I going to do this? Well, I need to create a new integer called total scores. I'm going to set it to 0 to begin with. And now I'm going to cycle through my list, and I'm going to total up all the scores. I'm actually going to copy and paste my for loop. I'm going to go through my whole list. At each entry, I'm going to get the information, and I'm going to add it to my total scores. I'm going to say total scores equals itself plus my score list value at the current slot. Let me make sure this is really clear. The first time through, I'm going to start at slot 0. Slot 0. Remember originally I had put in the number, I think it was 95. And then I think I put in 85. Well, let's keep this consistent to be clear. 75, 65, and what did I say, 10? I forget, but we'll just say that's 10. So my first slot's 95. My total score starts at 0, Now the total scores is going to add the value at slot 0. The value at slot 0 is 95. So now total scores will be 95. The second time through, I now increases to 1. Now I'm looking at slot 1. Total scores, which is currently 95, will become itself plus 85 more. What's 95 plus 85? I think that's, what is it, 180? So now that's 180. It's going to do the same thing for slot 2, 3, and 4. And so I don't want to do this math in my head right now. We'll let the program do it for us. That's the whole point of creating this. So what we've done here is the total scores will update its total amount as we go through for each entry. And so now what I'll have is an amount for all the totals. Let's just see what that would be. We'll let our program tell us. So let's do 5, let's do 95, 85, 75, 65, and 10. The total scores is 330. Thanks, Java, for doing that mental math for me. I appreciate that. But I don't care about the total scores. I want the average. What is the average score? It's going to be the total scores divided by the number of scores. How might we find the number of scores really easily? Do we have that information already somewhere? We do. The number of scores that we calculated earlier. And I can print out the average score is average score, whatever value I calculated for this. Let's make sure it's really clear. Let's say we have 3 values, and let's put in 100 and 50 and 0. Can you do mental math to see what the average would be for this? Average score is 50. It worked that time. Let's run the program again. Let's do 4 this time. Let's do 100 and 80 and 60 and 40. Average score is 70. My mental math confirms that's correct. Let's go back to our original list. 5 scores. 95, 85, 75, 65, and 10. Average score is 66. That's what you get from getting all these scores. Awesome. So our program runs just fine. It doesn't loop, but you can add that in later yourself. Oh, sorry about that weird sound. Apologize to your eardrums. Blame my wife for messaging me about our baby upstairs. Please forgive me. Well, we're basically done here. We've created a simple program, a simple application that, oh man, I gotta end this before my wife blasts your eardrums off, where we've scanned in information, we've added the information to an array, and then we processed all the information in an array by looping over it with a for loop. So we didn't use any while loops or switches here. You could have in different ways, but another example of using some of the functionality we've learned previously to create something that's kind of useful for us. Maybe you think averages are a little simple. Well, you can do any type of mathematical calculations in a programming language like Java. And so all that's up for you to do is to set up the logic properly so it does it for you, and so that you can solve some of your own problems of calculating things. I'm going to give you some suggestions for what you can do for your own projects to try some of this stuff out. But for now, this is the end of the tutorials I'm giving you for your section. Please refer to the instructions for the section project to see what challenges await you to try and implement your own applications to solve maybe some real-world problems, maybe to create some cool little games to practice text-based coding, referencing some different Java libraries, and just having fun trying to make some things that are hopefully kind of useful to us with a different approach to coding. Thanks, you guys.